my colleagues said they would have predicted that you would increase your risk of heart disease if you take alpha tocopherol. And Harvard, in their conclusion, said vitamin E is dangerous, don't take it. And give me a break. You just need to take mixed tocopherols with the gamma tocopherol, and yeah, you will decrease your risk of heart disease.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited to have an expert in longevity. His name is Dr. Mark Rosenbloom. He's an American medical doctor, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and coach. He is the founder and chief medical officer of LIFEFORCE Medical Institute. He is working with people to not only increase their lifespan, but also their health span, to live longer, healthier, more vital, with lives with vitality, with energy. And that is what we're going to be talking about here today. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Laura. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So let's give a brief background of how you got interested in the work that you're doing today.
Oh, wow. That's almost like an essay, but I've had, I guess, 3 careers. And I had a career in publishing before medical school, and I actually was the editor and publisher of a health magazine called Your Health. And I had a supplements company at that time. And so that got me sort of interested. And then I went to medical school and I found emergency medicine to be fascinating. So I became an emergency physician, did that for 18 years, and became a little bit disillusioned about, dealing with patients in emergency. While it was fun, it was more like patch me up, doc, so I can go and do the kinds of things that got me injured or sick in the first place. And I also was getting weary of all of the nights, which are profoundly unhealthy, let's say. And, and so I sort of reached back to these roots, and I had always tried to live healthy, but I took a course at Cenegenics to become a anti-aging physician. And I basically struck out on my own because I wanted to do my own thing and not work under somebody else's algorithm, which I wasn't that crazy about to begin with. And so that was over 15 years ago. And I've been doing this ever since. And it's been very fulfilling, a lot of fun. I feel that I'm healthier than I've ever been. And the people around me who listen to me are healthier than they've ever been. And it's really fun to take care of patients who are really interested in their health and dedicated to trying to make their lives better. So it's fascinating. It's fun. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And, we were talking briefly before and you said there is no magic bullet. There is it's more of a different kind of approach, a full-on approach. Talk a little bit about how do you see longevity? What is your approach, or when patients come to you, how are you working with them?
This is certainly not a magic bullet kind of approach. You can look at it as if it's buckshot. You have to hit so many different targets in so many different ways as strong as you can in order to get the maximum benefit. And just as an example, I saw a patient yesterday, a really bright, successful lady who did all the research, and she was on half a dozen great supplements of all kinds of different kinds, really good supplements. But when I did her labs, she had severe deficiencies. She had hormone abnormalities. She had a huge vitamin B12 deficiency, a vitamin D deficiency, and an iron deficiency. So here she jumped to XYZ, and she was missing the ABCs. So I basically start with the ABCs. And then we go up the alphabet, in effect. But you got to get the ABCs. You got to get the engine working and the structure working before you do the enhancements and the turbocharging and the things like that. And so the ABCs, the question would be, that is certainly things like optimizing your hormones is very important. Nutritional deficiencies, looking for those. Managing inflammation, exercise, diet, a huge genetic component. There's not a whole lot of genetic things which I think are valuable, but there's at least two genes that everybody has to know what their genetic makeup is of these two genes, because it's so critical about with regard to longevity. But everything you do in your life, let's say. And I also look at body composition, because you can have an unhealthy body composition, and that's going to reach up and bite you down the road. Too much fat, decreased bone density, decreased muscle mass. That's all part of it. So the ABCs is optimizing all of that and all the risk factors that you have for disease, and doing so as aggressively as possible. And so that's number one. And I don't even go to the next level until someone is optimized. But I do sort of tantalize them a little bit about what's potentially going to come with regard to the interventions, which some of them are fabulous and some of them are very inexpensive. And you can go all the way to very expensive. But once you've optimized the ABCs in a nutshell, and we can discuss how to do that and which ones are important and whatever, there are some really cool hacks like metformin, which can increase longevity. Rapamycin, in certain circumstances, can definitely increase longevity. And other things like senolytics. All of this inexpensive and really good bang for your buck. And then those that are really interested, okay, young plasma exchange, really cool, or genetic manipulations. I am a genetically enhanced human being. I went and did the genetic manipulation, which
Oh,
is
nice.
actually safe. I wouldn't do anything that's not safe. And what I did was safe because there's fascinating new technology where, well, they use a bacterial vector and they attach DNA and they inject it. It goes into the cells and it creates the DNA that's missing. And if for some reason you get into trouble, you take a particular antibiotic and it dissolves the vector and you're fine. So I'm comfortable taking some
That's
risks.
right. I heard about
So,
that one. So that's the gene. That's the gene therapy. What's the name of it again? Is it follistatin gene therapy? That's the one that you did?
yeah, it's plasmids, and yes, it's follistatin is what I did essentially, and that was, I felt like Superman for the first 6 weeks. It's just unbelievable. And
Wow.
after that, I'm sure I had benefit, but I'm doing so much and I'm feeling so good that it's hard. I'm not going to do a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, and wait 6 months to see, or wait 30 years to see if I'm living longer. I just do everything that I think is physiologically beneficial, has good research behind it, and will cause no harm. And one thing to say about longevity, um, in effect, everything that you're doing or everything that I am working with patients with to try and improve, it makes you feel better. It
Yeah.
improves the quality of your life. So it's not like you can live longer if we put you in an iron lung, and you're just lying there and whatever. No, no, you live life. You can do things you haven't done before, and you can maintain the vitality for decades. If not, potentially forever. Given a few more advancements, and maybe you can live forever if you want to. Let's say so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a
I'm on
lot.
that wagon too. Yeah, so I think there's so much I want to ask you about. You dropped a cliffhanger on us with the two genes that everyone must test. So I got to ask you what those two genes are. I'm sure everyone's wondering.
Okay, number one is APOE.
Mhm.
APOE is a fascinating gene, and there are three variants: E4, E3, and E2. Pretty much everyone had APOE4 because it was protective. It creates a strong immune response, an inflammatory response. And with all the bacteria and the crap that was out there a million years ago, it provided a significant survival benefit. But in today's society, with antibiotics and all that, no more survival benefit, essentially, unless you live in the Congo and you have no access to medical care. And so it creates inflammation. And the inflammation leads to Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, Parkinson's disease, and all kinds of other inflammatory diseases. And so you got to know, because 20% of the population have at least one copy of this gene. And if you know that you have this gene, there are a number of things you can do to mitigate the risk. And some things which are healthy for someone who doesn't have the gene, like for some reason saturated fat, healthy saturated fat like some grass-fed beef is supposed to be healthy, and yeah. But if you have the APOE4 gene, it gets converted to cholesterol, and it increases your risk of heart disease. So people with the gene have to avoid saturated fat, for one thing, have to take certain kinds of omega-3s that cross the blood-brain barrier and are protective, do other things that are protective against brain inflammation and other inflammation and things like that. And so it's a fascinating gene. And okay, my family, I have APO, I have one copy of the E4 gene. So I study it and I try to do everything that I can to mitigate that risk. And I have patients with two copies of the A4 gene. And, okay, I'm leading them through the right kinds of things to do. So that's number one, and that's important. Number two is COMT. And COMT codes for, or COMT actually is the enzyme that metabolizes dopamine primarily. And if you have decreased activity of COMT, your dopamine levels go sky high. And that's fascinating because it describes people who operate on a very high level with minimum kinds of stimulation. Your college professors, your academics, brilliant people, but if there's any kind of stress, they fall apart. And they don't know why. And other people say, well, you need Prozac, or you need this, or you need that. No, you understand yourself and you deal with it. And on the other hand, people who have an overactive COMT, and tend to have low dopamine levels, that's fascinating also, because their brain doesn't come alive unless or until they're under a very stressful situation or an exciting situation, or they're, things like that. And so they're the kind of people that you want on the front lines of the battlefield. They're the kind of people that jump out of airplanes and love it, even though that would drive me crazy. I have a friend, my best friend, loves to play any kind of sports so aggressively. He's had 13 surgeries, and he's still out there like one of the top pickleball players in the area. And he also is a public speaker, and he can be on the stage for 3 days straight because his brain comes alive. And if he's not doing that, he's depressed. And he didn't understand this. He didn't understand what's going on until I showed him that he has COMT plus, and so his dopamine is low, and he has to do this to come alive. And now he really understands himself. But the thing is, you can be preemptive too. If you are COMT or something, or a minus, check your kids. Because if they have a profile with low or high dopamine, you have some idea what turns them on and what turns them off. And people with low dopamine, you can also turn to drugs. You can turn to crime. There's an association with low dopamine and crime and drugs. Mixed martial arts fighters, like 65% of them have low dopamine. So they come alive, when their life is at stake or something like that. So, I would choose the optimal team. I want the coach to have high dopamine and be a planner, a strategist, and I want the people on the field to have low dopamine and be able to go crazy as warriors. So I think that's important. And I've really studied these two genes very, very extensively. It's fascinating to me. I've looked at other genes, I've done gene analysis, and yeah, this is associated with that. Some people say you got to do this. So I take it all with a grain of salt because I haven't seen it in real life. I did 50 gene analysis, and I put together a program and all that with everything that people say you should do, and worked with the patients. And the only two that came out as really meaningful are APOE and COMT.
Interesting.
But I may be missing something, and some people may have had other experience. This is my experience. You got to know, and it'll explain a lot of different things and help you with some important life decisions, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great tip right there to know. And then it's interesting because you mentioned in your ABCs, right, the basics, you mentioned hormones are really a part of that. And, some people might think the hormone stuff, testosterone or whatever kind of hormone replacement therapy might be more of a, not just the ABCs. That's a more advanced thing. That's a more fringe thing. But these days, it's becoming more and more common. And I would imagine as you're dealing with people who are, getting in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, the hormone, the quality of life, and the difference that it can make is probably there may not be a bigger needle mover than that, right?
Oh, that's major for sure. And you say 50, 60. Boy, I see people in their 20s. With what's going on with testosterone and with all the contaminants and all of the estrogen mimics and hormone mimics, there are men in their 20s and 30s who have really low testosterone. And what's really interesting, on the average, there's a generational decline. Like your testosterone is 20% lower on average than your dad's, and your kids' testosterone will be 20% lower than yours, and such. And so, why would you look at normal? It's normal, but it's absolutely not optimal. You want to be at optimal levels in order to function properly with regard to that. And we're built to sort of fall apart after we've reproduced. That's was a major advantage during evolution. That if you didn't have to take care of the older people, then you would potentially live longer, or it would propagate the species a little better. But that's sort of different now. And so, yeah, the hormones dropped off precipitously, on a curve with men, but like off a cliff with women, sort of thing. And maybe that's normal, but the disability and the issues and how it affects longevity and your quality of life is just enormous. And there's so much misinformation out there. Like, I've had patients whose doctors have told them, don't take testosterone, you'll get prostate cancer. And there's even doctors now who say that, or that they're concerned, when the truth is that's absolutely not the case. Because your prostate receptors are saturated at a testosterone level of 100. And it could be 200, it could be 2,000. It will not affect your prostate at all. And I've never seen a guy with a natural testosterone less than 100. So everybody is saturated when they come to see me. And no matter how much testosterone I give them, it will not increase their risk of prostate cancer. And in fact, there's some good studies now that it can decrease your risk of prostate cancer by about 10%.
Yeah.
So forget about that myth or so. And the second thing with women, um, women have had a tough time because there was a really bad study that was done in the early 2000s, the Women's Health Initiative. Um, it was improperly analyzed. Their conclusions were that it can increase your risk of breast cancer and heart disease, and millions of women stopped taking hormones as a result. And it was covered around the world with screaming headlines. And so, about 6 months later, when all the data was reviewed by the experts, they essentially said, "No, this is wrong. There's significant benefit, and in some cases there may be risk, but you can mitigate that risk." And there was a retraction of some of the conclusions, and the retraction didn't hit the media at
Mm.
all. You know, so it didn't even reach the doctors who are prescribing it. And so and I still see doctors now who refer to that inappropriately. And the fact is that if you take estrogen, bioidentical progesterone, even if you're worried about breast cancer, it will decrease your risk of breast cancer by like 2 to 5%. So if you're deficient and you don't replenish it, your risk of breast cancer is higher. So, and that's just one thing. But the thing is, oh my gosh, colon cancer, 60% decrease, heart disease, significant decrease, skin quality, sexual health, um, even disposition and your happiness and your fluid retention and your body image and sexual function and all of that stuff. You know, it should be a no-brainer. Oh, bone density also. It should be a no-brainer. And yet, you know, there's still all this misinformation out there. So absolutely get your hormones back to where they were at or should have been at age 30.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah, for
optimal.
men, I'm just
So
curious, what are your thoughts? What is an optimal, let's say, free testosterone or total testosterone for men? Where do you like to where do you like to see men at?
different labs have different numbers. So it's sort of hard to really say. Free test total testosterone around
Mm-hmm.
900, but the free and the bioavailable are what's really
Right.
important. And free around 15 to
Mm-hmm.
20,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
25. But, bioavailable, probably around 350 or something like that to 500. But, I also looked at dihydrotestosterone, which is the metabolite of testosterone, and what are the estrogen levels and things like that. But yeah, and if you look at the lab, okay, the top 1/3, let's say, of testosterone, whatever your lab's results are, top 1/3 at this point of testosterone or free testosterone are bioavailable. And that way it sort of takes out the variable of the actual units that they're using or the assay that they're using.
Nice.
So, and if you go a little higher, some people do better a little higher. Not the end of the world if you don't have any side effects. It's safe. It's actually safe, But bodybuilder doses, I don't, may not be as safe, but they aren't as bad as people say. Testosterone got a bit of a bad reputation when people were taking it as a pill instead of an injection, and then it's metabolized by the liver, and then it's very inflammatory if that
Mm.
happens, and you get toxic metabolites and stuff. Injectable, it's hard to get into trouble if you're monitored well. You do get into trouble because testosterone increases your hemoglobin and thickens your blood. So that's sometimes reason to stop, reduce the dose, or basically take it twice a week or so, because if it reaches a certain threshold, your risk of a heart attack or a stroke goes up
Mm.
enormously. So that has to be followed. And some people convert a lot of testosterone to estrogen. Not too many, but some that convert to estrogen will get, sort of female characteristics and gynecomastia and things, which after 6 months becomes permanent.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, to do it safely, absolutely, you check testosterone 3 months after you start. You check CBC, for hemoglobin 3 months after you start testosterone, and then if it's okay, every 6 months afterwards. Um, and um, and yeah, that's a way to do it safely. And check estrogen if it's really a through the roof, easy to block the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, and get healthier values
Amazing.
and stuff.
Amazing. Yeah.
So
Let's actually go on. So actually, yeah, let's talk about, I was going to move on to I do want to move on to some of the more advanced kind of fringe stuff. The rapamycins, the gene therapy we spoke about a little bit. But real quick first though, I mean, just getting back to the basics, I'm curious, if people were to ask you about what type of diet do you recommend, getting back to the basics, just kind of the quick overview of the diet you like to follow.
wow, and that is
Yeah.
individualized. So one thing that I have fun with is essentially looking at all the parameters and giving people advice with regard to their diet depending on some of their genetics, like APOE, their omega checks, their glucose metabolism, their cholesterol, their uric acid. All of that sort of comes into the recommendations. So it has to be personalized and something and then you have to do some trial and error because some people respond better than others. But if you want to talk about a specific diet, the Mediterranean diet, sure. And making sure that the quality of the fats are first class, like, make sure your olive oil is pure because so much of it is adulterated with vegetable oils. So I tell people, know who the manufacturer is, get it imported from Greece if you can, or go to a local olive oil producer because it gets adulterated with the vegetable oils, your linoleic acid goes up, and that's extremely inflammatory and can cause a lot of chronic diseases. Keto diet, short term, sure, it can be helpful. Some people it helps long term, but it sort of depends. And other diets, I think those two basically. Watch your carbs. Don't necessarily go to keto. Unless and it's individualized also. I've had patients on keto who are so good at it totally screwed up their cholesterol. They get 900 level of cholesterol or something. And so, yeah, they got to back off. And someone else, it improves their cholesterol.
Yeah.
So it's all a bit of trial and error,
Yeah.
too.
What are the ones like, what I find recently, rather than trying to, because there's so many different diets and so many of them claim to be good and many of them may be good in their own right. I've been telling people more like, here's what not to eat. Right. Like for me, I'm like, if you avoid fried foods and seed oils, if you avoid processed foods and sugars, right. Like if you just avoid those things, yeah, whether you want to eat more veggies and less meat or more meat and less veggies, in the end of the day, you'll probably be okay as long as you're not eating the real harmful things. Any other harmful things that you would put on that list that for people to be really mindful of?
Well, first of all, you'd be better, but you won't necessarily be okay. Because it's individualized. Again, if you have ApoE4, avoid saturated fat, whether it's grass fed or olive oil, or no, olive oil is good, but avoid saturated fat. Coconut oil has a lot of saturated fat. It's not good for me. If you don't have ApoE4, it's great for you because it's got a lot of omega 3. So a lot of it is pretty much individualized. What else to avoid? Yeah, sugars, the wrong kind of fats, eating too close to bedtime. In some cases, not enough carbs because people need carbs if you're going to go before a really significant workout. So other things to avoid, farm-raised fish, except for some farms are better than others. So, I've identified some salmon farms that actually I think are okay, but Norwegian salmon is poison
Really?
if you get it from the farms. It was tested by a company and had 5 times more toxins than any other food they've ever
Whoa.
tested. Norwegian farm salmon because of the long fjords and the factories at the end of the fjord, and all the toxins and waste goes through the salmon farm and gets incorporated into the fat. So avoid Atlantic salmon and Norwegian farm salmon. Atlantic salmon is always farm, but I like Faroe Islands. I've investigated. I think that's okay. New Zealand is pretty much okay because it's all in open, pristine waters, and will not have toxins. It may not have the best omega 3, but at least you're not going to get the toxins in the crab. And same with Scottish salmon. So I investigate things like that.
That's
So
cool.
avoid farm salmon. There'd be lots of, oh my God, GMOs. Try and avoid that. Non-organic foods, the ones that you have to worry about, sort of avoid, but a little individualized, So with two things. One is if you do have a problem with detox in your liver and stuff, okay, you got to be really careful. But if not as careful, and the thing is, I tell patients, go and have something that's not good for you every now and then. You got to have fun. Life has to be fun. And make a choice, though. Don't do it blindly figure out, okay, I'm going to have 2 drinks tonight. Okay, I'm not going to sleep well. I'm going to feel like crap tomorrow. But hey, I think it's worth it. Once a month or once every 3 months. Or I'm at a fabulous restaurant and there's this gorgeous rib steak just staring me in the eye and potato and stuff. Okay. But also, it also depends. Like if you really have an issue with your omega-3 fats and an issue with your carbs and your liver isn't functioning that well and stuff, the trade-off becomes a lot more towards you just don't do it, let's say.
Right.
So you got to look at the labs and be individualized and stuff, but everybody doesn't have to be a
Right.
monk, let's say. And the monks are really happy in their nutrition. But I mean that with regard to perceived enjoyment of life, let's say, and some of the vices that life has to offer. Have fun. I have fun,
Yeah.
but I make choices. I make choices, let's say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh,
Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the, I guess, either supplements or treatments that you're most excited about. You mentioned the follistatin gene therapy. You mentioned rapamycin. Those are two maybe that we can touch on. Very, very hot topics, kind of well known in the longevity community right now. Yeah, so you said the follistatin gene therapy for 6 weeks after you felt incredible, and that is a actual gene therapy injection that you have to go somewhere overseas, some other country to get it done. Yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about that and rapamycin and why you're taking these two kind of, I guess, what others would consider fringe kind of methods.
yeah. Well, first of all, Follistatin, you can go to the Honduras where you get a direct flight from anywhere, from Texas to California and other places. Just go to Road 10 in the Honduras. They'll pick you up, put you up in a nice hotel, bring you there. You'll get the injection, which will take about 30 seconds. And then you're done. Maybe watch you for 10 minutes, make sure you don't have an allergic reaction. There are studies going on in the United States, but, if you can afford it, you want to get the real thing as opposed to maybe a placebo or something like that. And what follistatin decreases as you age. Yeah, it decreases as you age. And what follistatin does is it suppresses myostatin. Myostatin, therefore, goes up as you age, and that's myo, muscle, statin, static. So because myostatin goes up, your ability to put on muscle gets harder and harder to do. So that's one of the basic things. And so if you take the follistatin and you suppress the myostatin, then it's much easier to build significant amounts of muscle, lose fat, improve your body composition. But there's so many other things that it does. I mean, they found that on average, it can reduce your biological age by like 7 to 12 years by doing this injection. It has a number of positive other benefits with regard to energy and things like that. But they did warn me that the first 4 or 5 weeks, the results are a little, it's a little enhanced, which I think was an understatement because I could swim normally like 45 to 55 minutes. And I was at a resort and I saw an island about, almost a mile away. And I said, I'm going to swim to that island and back. And I did. And it was close to 2 hours. And then the next day I ran twice as long as I've ever run before. And I had great workouts and really felt good. But sleep wasn't that good. But, so that was the immediate effects. And I thought, boy, it's hard to live this way because the sleep wasn't that good, but the energy was through the roof. I thought maybe I should just reverse it. But, it came back to manageable levels and I felt great. And initially I did get a test which showed that my biological age went down about 8
Nice.
years. So, but those tests are not
Yeah.
that accurate, So it's like, okay, it felt good. But the thing is, it's hard not to continue to do the things I'm doing because I have so much energy and I'm enjoying it and I'm enjoying life and I'm active in so many different
Yeah.
ways. So it's hard to cull anything out. And I do want to decrease the risk of Alzheimer's and heart disease and inflammation because of APOE4. And so I just do things that make physiological sense, let's say. And as long as I feel great, I'll continue to
Yep.
do that. Let's say.
Exactly.
So that was that experience, which was it was a fascinating experience. They're experimenting with the Klothos gene, doing the same kind of DNA therapy with that. And the results have been a little equivocal so far. They haven't gotten the dosing right and things like that. But the Klothos gene is supposed to be the gene which is the primary aging
Mm.
gene, almost like legendary. But there is a gene, and so there is gene therapy that they're trying. I could have been one of the first 5 people in the world to get this therapy.
Sometimes it's better to be the
I wasn't going to do it.
thousandth person or the hundredth person rather than one of the first
Yeah,
five.
I mean, I was feeling I was feeling great. I wasn't didn't want to disturb that. One of the benefits, the huge benefits, was that it seemed to improve cognition
Mm.
significantly. So people were able to process information as they could in their late teens and
Wow.
20s. People in their 60s and 70s. And so it holds great promise with regard to that. In addition to the immortality that potentially I think its nickname is the immortality gene or so. But I'm gonna wait. I'm in no hurry.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And you said you feel great. You have
So
this energy. How old are you right now, if you don't mind me asking?
72.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah.
So
That's what I want. When I'm 72, I want to have the energy and be working out and have an active life and feeling great.
oh, I'm still my strength. I did a Spartan race about 2 years ago. The first Spartan race. I hadn't done a race since the 80s and 90s when I used to run. And my trainer just said, "Hey, you're still running and you're strong. Why don't you do a Spartan race?" And so, I actually did the race a week after my 70th birthday, and
Nice.
I completed it. And I was number 7 in my age class, but there were about 9 people over 70.
That's
So
all right.
out
Well,
of
that just
like
says, you
4,000.
did it.
So, that was a great feeling. It really was great to do that because the obstacles, it's a 5 kilometer race, but there are 20 obstacles. And if
Mm.
you look at any one of them, it would be, oh my God, I can't do that. But my trainer gave me some of the tips and the adrenaline on the day of the race and watching other people sort of do it. I did it, man. I did, I actually did, I think, 17 of the 20, and I did the penalty burpees for the other three, you know, or
Yeah.
so. So I
Amazing.
completed it. That was fun. So,
That's
yeah.
really cool. That's really cool. I want to be doing a Spartan race when I'm 70 as well. Um, what about rapamycin? Tell us a little bit about why are you taking that? I know that's one where, you're taking a tiny dose and people who have gone even a little bit above that tiny dose have sometimes seen side effects, but you seem to be taking it and like it.
Um, yeah, I mean, not necessarily seeing benefits because again, it's more like part of my whole mix that I take. But rapamycin is really interesting because it's an old drug. They were using it in the 80s and the 90s for immune suppression in transplant patients in huge doses. And so if you look up side effects, it might be related to those huge doses. And yeah, it really suppresses the immune system. But it's almost like we're taking it in micro doses and really small. I'm taking 3 milligrams once a week. And so it suppresses the immune response. And given that I have ApoE4 and I have a little hyperactive immune response, that intellectually seems like the right thing to be doing, even though it will benefit a lot of other people. It's the right thing to be doing, and I'm at a really low dose just to be sort of safe at this point. there are some tests that you can do to really analyze your immune system a little more closely and decide if a larger dose will be safe. But this dose I think is a fine dose to be taken. I don't need to fine tune it. I think just suppress the immune system a little bit, and along with everything else that I'm doing to modulate the immune system and stuff. Sure. So it's a good drug, and there's some really good research with regard to that and how it improves longevity, decreases inflammation, and therefore, you would feel better. I mean, the studies that are done, you know, they're like looking for magic bullets. So you do a blind placebo study, and it's like, okay, all these people normal, all these people just rapamycin, and what happens? And yeah, there's some benefit, but the thing is, for longevity and maximum benefit, it has to be a buckshot kind of approach with stuff. And sometimes, my gosh, if you if you study one thing in isolation, you're going to find a negative response. And that's because of the like orchestra effect. And if you do one thing and you enhance one thing and it pushes some other things down that are of value, you might get a negative response. And that's why you've got to balance your supplements. You got to make sure they're natural and balanced in the right proportion. If you take vitamin D, you have to take vitamin K2, MK7, specifically because otherwise the calcium doesn't necessarily go to your bones. It could go to your heart. You can have negative consequences. But you won't find that in supplements because it's more expensive than everything combined. It's a very expensive add-on. And I couldn't find it in a multivitamin. And so I designed my own multivitamin to include it. And you got to be careful because a lot of times you buy a multivitamin, like 2 to 5% of the cost goes to the ingredients. And the rest is marketing and profit and multi-levels and things like that. And you usually can't get a good supplement or a good product from that. And so I had to design my own and with all the right kinds of ingredients. Vitamin E is another example. You may have read or heard that vitamin E can increase your risk of heart disease if you take vitamin E, because Harvard did a study, and they bought vitamin E from Walgreens because that's what people were buying, and that's alpha tocopherol, which is one form of vitamin E, and there are 8 kinds of vitamin E, and gamma tocopherol is very cardioprotective, but if you take alpha, you depress gamma. And so my colleagues said they would have predicted that you would increase your risk of heart disease if you take alpha tocopherol. And Harvard, in their conclusion, said vitamin E is dangerous, don't take it. And give me a break. You just need to take mixed tocopherols with the gamma tocopherol, and yeah, you will decrease your risk of heart disease. And there's so much of this, which is what's so wrong with medicine in a way, is these double-blind placebo-controlled studies, as if you're going to find a magic bullet, and you're upsetting the equilibrium, and you're sometimes causing more harm than good. And you need to look at the whole combined approach, the whole, so-called holistic, but it can include medicines, it can include supplements, it includes everything. And if only we could start doing research with regard to that, but there's so many anecdotal and all, and the people that I know, and people are doing well. So that's the way to go.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I feel the same. It's like, I feel great, so I'm going to keep doing everything. I'm not going to, just test one thing at a time. I'm going to do it all. But that's the importance of why working with someone like yourself, who is doing regular blood tests with his clients, the clients can see and measure the levels, and you can measure and monitor everything. So yeah, I'd love to hear, can you tell everyone where they can find you if they want to potentially work with you, if they can? I know you do. Do you do some telemedicine? Can you work with people in different states across the country?
I do telemedicine pretty much exclusively these days because I like to enjoy life and travel, and I can do that anywhere in the world. Um, the thing is, the initial telemedicine appointment, a patient has to be in a state where I'm licensed to set up. It's not like they're coming to see me in a state where I'm licensed, but I'm not there. I'm like in the Bahamas or, overseas, but they have to be where I'm licensed. So I'm licensed in Illinois, Arizona, New Jersey, and Florida. I'm accredited in Florida also to do telemedicine. And I have patients who, they basically pass through an airport at O'Hare, and we do a telemedicine, a brief one, and then we're set up for a year. And then everything else is via email or phone or whatever. So it's actually pretty easy with regard to that. And my website, I can tell you what my website is.
Please.
It's lifeforcemed.com. So it's LIFEFORCEMED.com. Not to not to be confused with a latecomer lifeforce.com or lifeforce. They stole my name. I've had my name for 15 years, but I didn't trademark or anything. So and they do some really good work, but I think they're a little commercialized too because it's expensive and stuff. And I have access to everything they have access to. There are ways to get all of the advanced testing, which is really cool, and the early diagnosis and all of that. There's so much that's available, but it's customized, and we can definitely have access to all of that. So yeah, I still accepting new patients, mostly at a concierge level. And in some cases, if it's very limited, somebody is young with only like one problem, there's other plans which are more reasonable. So.
Amazing. Amazing. Mark, this has been really great. I love hearing about how well you're doing at age 72 and all the different things that you're doing. And it gives me a lot of hope for my future as well. Highly recommend that. Again, the things that you're talking about are really game-changing things, like especially the hormones. I think more and more as we have more podcasts about it, and as time goes by, people are realizing, hey, this is not something that's dangerous. It's actually potentially dangerous not to do it, right? And there's many benefits from people from having better body composition. Just alone, right, is very good for your health. And that's one thing that people see, but there's so many other benefits. So yeah, highly recommend, but you have to work with someone who knows what they're doing. Obviously, Mark knows what he's doing here. You're going to be, regularly tested and monitored. So highly recommend people go to lifeforcemed.com and check it out if you're interested. And Mark, thank you so much for joining us here today. I learned a lot. I'm sure many others listening did as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Taylor. I had fun. Okay.
So did I. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, can you please leave us a rating or review and subscribe? I've realized that while we have actually increased our downloads a lot, we're actually getting a lot of downloads, which I'm really happy about. We actually have very few ratings. And I realized that I've never asked people really to rate much. So I'm asking you now if you could please rate and review and subscribe. And if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to anyone that you think will get value out of this. Also, if you haven't checked out our line of products at buypeakperformance.com, you get 20% off your first order. That's www.buypeakperformance.com. We have some incredible products, including our organic high-altitude coffee. If you don't know this, coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed with pesticides out of any crop. So it's really important that you drink organic coffee. We've gone above and beyond to source what we believe is the highest quality and healthiest organic coffee in the world. We're also famous for our organic green superfood powder. You can get 20% off of that as well at buypeakperformance.com. We also have an organic vegan and paleo plant protein. See, most of the vegan proteins out there are using brown rice protein, which is really not a good source of protein, and it's also a grain. And if you're paleo, you know that grains tend to cause inflammation in some cases for some people. And so we wanted to make one that was paleo friendly and vegan and organic. We made an amazing amino acid profile, so it's really one of the best plant proteins for muscle building. So you can check out Peak Performance Organic Plant Protein. You can find that on our website. Of course, all our products are on Amazon as well. So thanks again. And again, please, if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to someone who you feel can get value out of it. And please leave us a rating, review, and subscribe. Thank you.